Hello, this is Kristan Weisdack, CEO and founder of BehaviorWorx of Southwestern PA, and thank you for joining us for another Work Through It Wednesday. This Wednesday's video is going to focus on refusal to do work. We just finished up a great training with a local school district, and some of the things that we're going to talk about today are what we highlighted during that training, and we even went into more depth about the underlying medical issues that can cause children to refuse to do their work. We went into more detail about things called retained primitive reflexes and ocular motor dysfunction as well. But today we're going to cover just some basics around why kids are refusing to do work using that antecedent behavior consequence sheet and the 4-quadrant sheet. If you don't already have those, you can go to your email if you're already subscribed, and if you're not, feel free to join as well. We're going to add the link in the comments to this video to help you get that information. Download it and you can follow along week by week. We want to help you, the viewers, not just as early intervention professionals or teachers, but also people that have gone through our trainings that want additional information about when a behavior comes up in your classroom, how to use this information, a process of elimination basically, on understanding why your student is refusing to do their work and any other behaviors. You can figure out what the function of their behavior is, whether it's attention, escape, avoidance, gaining a tangible, if they're trying to regulate their behavior, or if there's something else underlying going on. So what I want you to do is take out that 4-quadrant sheet, the attention, escape, avoid, gain tangible, and self-stimulatory. As we start off every video, we're going to write what those antecedents are in each of those 4 quadrants. So take your 4-quadrant sheet, and under attention, you're going to write, no attention was given. Then in escape, avoid, you're going to write a demand was presented. So some sort of learning task or play task or mealtime task was presented to that child. And gain tangible is pretty self-explanatory. The child or person that you're working with, because it could be adults as well, did something to gain a tangible item from you as their caregiver or someone else, perhaps a peer. And then self-stimulatory is basically a behavior that that person used to regulate themselves. So you can just put regulate the body in that 4th quadrant. And then circle everything that you just wrote. So you're going to circle no attention was given, demand was presented, gain tangible, and regulate the body. And circle everything that's listed at the bottom of the sheet: the food, oxygen, water, sleep, activity, pain, and temperature. Now what you're going to do is take the functions of behavior worksheet that you've also downloaded, and there's antecedent, behavior, and consequence. As you work through these issues that are happening in your classroom as an EI provider, whatever that might be, I always suggest starting with the behavior column because that's the easiest to pinpoint. But what you want to do if you're working on a teen is operationally define what that behavior looks like. So if, let's say, we're working through refusal to work, we want to know what that looks like across the board, but also paying attention to when it is and is not happening. So refusal to work, we could say maybe they're crumbling their papers and throwing them on the ground, right? And so that's when we would collect data, perhaps about the frequency of throwing papers and crumbling on any data collection sheets that we would have. So the behavior here, we've already established. And then looking at that antecedent is everything that you just circled on that 4-quadrant sheet. So you can do a process of elimination to say, well, it wasn't really attention seeking. They didn't do any self-stimulatory behavior, which can be rocking, flapping. You and I have done this if you've tapped your pen or you shake your leg during a meeting, right? Those things can be self-regulating. And it wasn't really to get anything, right? They weren't trying to get a toy, get food, get anything else from you or a peer. So the only thing that's left really in this scenario is that they were trying to escape or avoid that situation. So right now what we have happening is the antecedent was a demand was presented. They refused to do the work. and what might be happening intermittently or all the time is that they get out of that work. And so the antecedent and the consequence usually match. If they were trying to escape a void when that demand was presented, then the consequence usually matches up, that they were able to get out of that. And that creates that cycle of behavior that continues over and over again until we intervene, collect some data, and see if it's helping or it's not helping. So at the bottom of that sheet, the functions of behavior worksheet, we want you to be able to present a demand. Now, it's also, like I said, important to understand when this is happening and when it's not happening. So collecting some data that when this refusal to work happens, maybe it's only around math or reading. And then what we want to have happen is work completion. And then the consequence is praise, reward for work, recess, etc. Right? And so we want that to happen over and over again. Now, I want to highlight from some very specific things in order to help that occur, right? So you can make what are called curricular revisions. And now this has to be established at the onset in the paperwork for the school district, obviously in the IEP. But curricular revisions, what I would say is if you know that when that demand is presented, that child can do, let's say, 12 problems, you want to stop at the 10th problem to head that behavior off at the pass. What I was doing with a kindergarten student that I worked with many years ago is after he would complete 10 problems, I would put a little stop sign on his sheet to tell him after he did 10 problems that he could stop. And we built in escape avoidance to that activity, right? So after 10 problems, we had some heavy work. We were working with the OT. It was a really beautiful thing that he was able to take a heavy backpack from one side of the room and then another heavy basket of books. It was age appropriate, right? From the other side and back. After he did that work, he was able to come back, sit down, and do the other 10 problems without any refusal to do his work. It was really, really fantastic. So sometimes finding a way to build in a little escape avoidance is fantastic because the work gets done, there is no disruption in your classroom, and it's a win-win situation for everybody, and it's reinforcing to that child because they know that that activity has been made something that they can accomplish, right? The other thing that has worked well with the students for the last 17 years is establishing how many of something have to be completed. Even if you're asking them for food, right? For how many more bites of food they have to take. Instead of just putting a whole lot of food on their plate, you can just say, take 6 more bites and then you can be all done, or cutting it up into those 6 pieces and sliding it to the side, saying, these 6 bites and then you can be all done. The same happens with the math work or the reading, and to just tell them that they only have to do so much of that work and then they can be all done. And then, like I said, with that kindergarten kiddo, find a way, if there's an occupational therapist working with the team, find a way to build in a sensory diet. Is there a way for sensory reinforcement to help that child regulate in the classroom? Because you have to understand that a lot of these kids with autism or ADHD, they are either over or understimulated by sensory input. So being able to give them breaks and make modifications to the classroom, which we go into more detail in our trainings as well, is really, really helpful for these kids. So I hope this Work Through It Wednesday helped you establish more of an understanding of why refusal to work happens, right? Some of these kids are just overwhelmed and overloaded, but also 3 or 4 tips that you can use that are practical, that are evidence-based, that you can start using this week. So if you have a scenario that you're working through, like I said, as an EI provider, as a teacher in a classroom, and you're just not sure what's going on, and need more guidance about how to work through it, you can send that to us at behaviorworxpa@gmail.com. That's behaviorworxpa@gmail.com, and just title it Work Through It Wednesday, and we'll be sure to discuss it here on our Work Through It Wednesday videos. Take care, and we will see you next week.